On this episode of Bus Talk, we're going to review the licensing and certification requirements to be a school bus driver and do an incident report on a school bus crash in New Hempstead, New York.
This channel covers all stuff about school bus driving. It's about getting kids to and from school safely to support learning. We'll talk about the lighter side of the student transport system. My wife and I married over 30 years ago. We raised 2 adult sons. We love our pets. I had a demanding and stressful career. In 2018, we decided to leave the rat race behind. I trained to be a school bus driver. This is my story of the joys and frustrations of driving big yellow machines.
Hi, this is Paul from Bus Talk. This is episode 2. We here at Bus Talk, we talk about getting kids to and from school safely to support learning. Today's episode, we're going to talk about the different licenses and certificates that you need to operate a school bus. I'm here in California, but many of these rules for operating a school bus are federal regulations, and so it covers most of the USA, but some of the rules we'll talk about are specific to California, but most states have similar type of rules for operating school buses. So the first one is a valid Class B driver's license with passenger endorsement. To get your Class B driver's license, you first have to pass a knowledge test, and that includes the air brakes component. Then you have to pass a knowledge test for your passenger endorsement. And once you do that, you can proceed to the second thing that you need, which is your school bus certificate. School bus certificate, you first have to pass 20 hours of school bus driver classroom training. Then you have to pass 20 hours behind the wheel with a certified school bus driver instructor. And in California, the California Highway Patrol, or the CHP, is responsible for certifying all school bus driver instructors. And this type of training can take a little while because you have to be in the bus with your instructor. You can't be operating the bus with children on board. So in my case, it took me a little while to get those 20 hours behind the wheel because our district is really busy and our instructor wasn't able to dedicate as much time. So it took me about 8 months to be ready and through my classroom and my behind the wheel training. Once you're done with that, you have to go to the Highway Patrol, and you will have to do a fingerprint check. I did it by going to our local police department and doing the live scan, which is a optical digital program where they take your fingerprints and they send them to a state and nationwide database to make sure that you have a good background. You can't be a school bus driver if you have any criminal convictions or any crimes of moral turpitude. You're working around children, so you need to have a good background and be able to show that you're of good character to be able to be around the kids. When you go to the California Highway Patrol, you have to take a written test on school bus driving, and you have to either show that you are certified by the American Red Cross with a first aid certificate or take a first aid exam. I took the first aid exam, but since that time I have also passed and obtained the American Red Cross first aid certificate. Once you've done that, you're ready to take the behind the wheel test. You take the behind the wheel test with a California Highway Patrol officer. In our area, there's an officer that's dedicated to the school bus driving program. And it's a behind the wheel test. It starts off with the school bus check. You have to do the safety check on the school buses. And then you have to do the air brakes test. When I took it, they give you 20 minutes to be able to do all this. And You have to have that portion of the procedure down to be able to complete it in 20 minutes. Then you go and drive around with the highway patrol officer. That part wasn't that difficult. You did have to demonstrate that you could do a railroad crossing and back around a corner. And I took my test in a 40-foot transit bus. So once you pass the California Highway Patrol behind the wheel test, you can take they issue a certificate. And you take that certificate to the Department of Motor Vehicles, and the Department of Motor Vehicles actually issues your license. So you'll have a school bus driver certificate, and then you'll have a license that has a P endorsement for passengers and an S endorsement for school bus driver. The school bus driver certificate is good for 5 years. So the third thing that you need is you need to have a valid medical examiner certificate. This is a federal requirement from the Federal Department of Transportation. Most certificates are good for 2 years. They have to be issued by a doctor in the National Registry of Medical Examiners, and it's a basic health check. They're looking at your vision, your hearing, they check your blood pressure, they check your pulse, they make sure you have some agility. I think I had to demonstrate I could touch my toes. You have to show that you have strength, some levels of strength, and you take a diabetes test. This is not a wellness check or a complete physical examination. It's really just to check that you're healthy enough that you won't have a medical condition that might cause a problem or incident when you're operating the school bus. Sometimes medical certificates are only issued for 1 year, and that means you just have to come back every year and retake your physical. And you have to have a valid medical examiner certificate on file or on your person at all times. The certificate is then submitted to the Department of Motor Vehicles. So, what are the 3 things you need to become a school bus driver? You need to have a valid Class B driver's license. You need to have a school bus driver certificate, and you need to have a medical examiner's certificate. Those have to be on your person at all times when you're operating the school bus. Okay, so that wraps up our bus talk for this episode. Remember, safety is essential. Okay, so this is episode 2 of Bus Talk. This is going to be our section, Incident Report. In the Incident Report section, we look at school bus crashes and collisions and incidents in the USA and sometimes maybe Canada. And we look at them so that we can learn from them to be safer and getting kids to and from school to promote learning. So today we're going to look at a crash that occurred in New Hempstead, New York on December 1st, 2022. This information was reported on the internet by loha.com and rocklanddaily.com. So in this crash, a bus went off a roadway down a slope, hitting a utility pole and 2 cars before colliding with a house. So the house was at 36 Southgate Road, and you can see from the photograph that the bus came to rest on one of the vehicles that it struck. It looks to me like we're really lucky in this crash that the bus didn't overturn on its side, which would have been much more serious. There were 22 people on the bus. There was 21 students and 1 driver. 7 students had non-life-threatening injuries. 2 students were admitted to the hospital. The driver had a head gash. The police reported that the driver lost control coming downhill. Witnesses reported that the bus hit one minivan at the top of the hill, skidded off the road, scraped by the utility pole, collided with another vehicle, and then hit the house and came to rest on the second vehicle. So what can we learn from this incident? I'm just speculating here, but from the information available in the news, it appears to me that the crash was caused by too much speed. There were comments in the news reports that this road is often used as a cutoff between major arterials in New Hempstead, and people use it to avoid congestion. I think we have to remember in this case that there is a basic speed law. The basic speed law says that you can't drive any faster than the roadway, the weather, or traffic conditions are safe. So even though you have a posted speed limit, you can't drive that posted speed limit if it's not safe to. I have experience with this. I drive here in Northern California on a lot of rural roads, and we have in this area kind of really bad tule fog, especially in the wintertime. The tule fog can be extremely thick with low visibilities. And even though you drive on rural roads that are posted at 35 miles an hour, when the fog is this thick, you really can only safely drive between 15 and 20 miles an hour. So that's following the basic speed law. Again, I think in this case, it's really fortunate that this bus didn't overturn. There were victims, and our heart goes out to those victims and the children that were injured. But I think in this case it could have been a lot worse. And again, I'm speculating, but I really think that speed was the cause for this crash. So that wraps up Incident Report for Episode 2 of Bus Talk.